right, I'm back with This Week at Tassi, my weekly news roundup. There was some Destiny news I could do a video on. I'm going to jam that into the end there as the fifth item of the day, so stay tuned for that, I guess, if you want to make it all the way there. Um, Interesting stories today. I think there are a number of odd and sort of fascinating stories that happened over the course of this week. I am not going to talk about the Battlefield launch today because that happened like a couple hours ago, and we'll see what kind of stories unfold from that. And if they can compete with Call of Duty this year, would love to see that, but we'll see. To start with, this was a scoop from Steven Totillo, who has a new GameFile newsletter after his time running Kotaku. He gets a lot of big scoops there. And one is that Ubisoft was planning to make an Assassin's Creed game set in the Civil War and in the Reconstruction era after that. Kind of an awesome idea at baseline, but they scrapped the concept last summer in 2024, and a lot of people were mad about that. So a lot of people talked to Steven about that. And the reason they did it wasn't like budget or whatever. It was pretty much the fact that the internet bullied them into not doing it. The storyline would have been about a former slave, a black slave who was, there's some fighting in the Civil War, obviously, but then he heads back down south to take on his old enemies, including the Ku Klux Klan. And I don't know, that sounds really cool, but the rationale given for why this didn't happen, a lot of it was based on Yasuke, the black samurai that caused so much controversy in Assassin's Creed Shadows. That ranged from debates about whether he was a real life samurai or they were just fictionalizing things too much, because Assassin's Creed never fictionalizes anything, or the fact that they finally made a Assassin's Creed game set in Japan and it does not star a Japanese male lead. Of course, there's a Japanese female lead that almost went entirely ignored during this whole debate. And then there's just racism, because that is certainly part of that, if not most of the other two things, even if people would get offended saying that. That was like almost consuming, 80% of the conversation online about Shadows before it released, to the point where like it was overwhelming at least some of the marketing campaign, and Ubisoft had to like issue statements here and there, and like they were, talked about, we did something wrong with Japanese culture, and everyone was just like attacking the game in a way that we rarely see with the series to this extent. I don't think we've ever seen anything to this extent. Obviously, Valhalla with its Vikings had none of this. And the second thing is they just thought that politics in the US were too crazy now. Not that we have a literal civil war, but the country is supremely divided in ways that I don't even know when the last time is. Maybe the Civil War. I don't know. But this was before the second election of Donald Trump that this was canceled. I mean, the election was running for years and stuff, or the pre-election, but they were just scared that a game about the Civil War and then a black slave going to kill white people in the South is too political and it'd be too controversial. All of this sucks as a player, because that sounded awesome. That would have been a really cool game. But like from the corporate Ubisoft risk averse side, it's pretty easy to see why they did this. I think they saw that they took a risk doing Yasuke, and they didn't want to get yelled at again. A lot of their devs were like directly harassed to the point where many of them needed psychological counseling. And they didn't want to go through that whole thing again for another game. But it does come off as kind of cowardly, to be kind of bullied out of a cool game concept, which I think many people in Ubisoft agreed with that happening. And I don't know. It's a really interesting story. It's a bummer that we won't get that game. My gut tells me that like the online trolls that were mad about Yasuke would have enjoyed being mad about this game because that's kind of what they like to do. But we're not getting that. We're getting other things and no more politics, I guess. Moving on from that, something else very controversial. Sora 2 debuted, which is OpenAI's video making program where you type in some stuff like ChatGPT and it will generate an AI video for you almost instantly. There are a couple things to this that are bad in terms of you are able to generate extremely lifelike, realistic seeming videos of like real people. And you can scan in your face and generate videos of you too. So that, has broader implications for society. But the other part of this was copyrights. And we all know that AI sucks at copyright, or they don't suck, they just purposely ignore it. And Sora 2 certainly did this. It was a very weird situation where they pre-blocked a number of things. Like you couldn't really do any superheroes or like Star Wars characters or a lot of like celebrities or things like that. But then there were like entire categories that were excluded from this, like pretty much all animation. So people were making like perfectly made Rick and Morty clips or South Park clips to the point where it's just like a scene from the show, including voice work. And then no video games appeared to be exempt. I typed in dozens of characters that I could think of. So unlike the superheroes, you could do video with all of them. And what got focused on the most was Pokemon, and people kept making endless amounts of Pokemon videos, which ultimately included like things like Pikachu doing ASMR. And it got to the point where right before this was all shut down, I saw Sam Altman grilling a Pikachu on the grill and eating it. After that, it wasn't, I don't think it was just a Nintendo thing. I think a lot of people were starting to contact them, and then OpenAI came out with this big thing of like, oh, well, rights holders can, opt into the system if they want their characters used, and we'll give them control. And like there was some reporting that originally the system was opt out. That may have been true, but it was changed because like within 24 hours of things getting really controversial, they shut it down. They shut down all of that. Everything I just mentioned, you cannot do anymore, to the point where they've put content warnings on so much generated content that usage of the app is like tanking because people are sick of trying to do anything, even things not related to, copyrighted stuff at all. And they're just getting blocked. So the system has been heavily nerfed, which I guess is a win for anti-AI people, but it's like, it's crazy that they just like had the balls to debut it with like, hey, we're just using all of your characters in any way we want. Like, this is fine, right? And then they realized quickly that like, well, I feel like they had to know this was coming, and then they shut it down immediately. But now everyone's mad at them for doing that. So we'll see where that goes from here. There are already lawsuits against like Midjourney and places like that about using characters. This was the worst use of characters I've ever seen. Like easily the biggest misuse of characters with AI. So we'll see if that comes up again or if it gets unnerfed. But yeah, that was a wild 2 days there. Getting specific to Borderlands, I found this really interesting. There was some data scraped from the game that heavily implied that during the storyline of Borderlands, I guess, spoilers, Borderlands 4, that Ava, the young siren from Borderlands 3, was going to be the second main lead from the old games, along with Zane instead of Amara. And late in the game, like Randy Pitchford did a poll about what people thought of Amara. I don't know if that was a year or two ago or when it was, or so what they thought about Ava. And it's been long established that most Borderlands fans hate Ava, hated her storyline, hated her character, all of that. So the idea that this big comeback of the game would feature Ava heavily in a specific role probably ended up freaking out at least some people at Gearbox, maybe Randy, I don't know. And the good decision was made, I would argue, to replace her with Amara. The funny part about this is that you can see Ava in this storyline pretty clearly. Like Amara is hiding out in the ruins of Sanctuary, which does not remotely sound like something she would do. It's like this fierce warrior who would probably be kicking ass everywhere. She has, I forget the name of the pet, but like she has Ava's pet Hermes, I think, where she's watching it. Like she, some of her siren powers she uses are Ava's powers, and they like edited in some of her like hand powers later. Just a lot of her dialogue sounds like something Ava would say as opposed to something Amara would say. And there's a lot of clues in the game, and then knowing that's actually what happened is kind of funny. I think it was a good decision. I like Amara as an NPC. Zane was amazing. Zane's like the MVP of the whole game, but it was definitely a good call to do that. It's just kind of funny that it happened, and we have very clear evidence of that. One weird thing going on that I think this just happened yesterday is the art director, who is 17-year veteran of the franchise, who's now at 343, Google in Israel, up and nowhere quit 343, and his departing statement is very weird. I'll just read it here. This was on Facebook, I think. As of today, and after 17 long years, I am officially no longer contributing to the Halo universe. There is little more I can say for the moment, though I intend to share this particular story in its entirety when it is absolutely safe to do so next year. In the meantime, I have a message for anyone and everyone who needs to hear it. I know that the state of our industry seems dire, but never forget you are free to choose. No illusion of security nor promise of wealth or fame or power is worth trading away your health, your dignity, your ethics, or values. No one can force you to. Stay strong, take evidence when necessary, and find where you belong. As always, I'll be here if you need to talk. Oh, what? That's a weird statement. I assume this has something to do with him being treated poorly. Trading away your health signifies some sort of crunch. Your dignity, ethics, and values. That's a wide range of stuff. We obviously know that there has been kind of like leadership mistreatment in the industry, even among senior people. Clearly, the state of 343 has not been great for a long time as they attempt to wrestle Halo into something relevant again. That has not especially happened. So this seems like a story that's going to evolve over time, and we'll get more info on it eventually. But one of the weirder departing statements I've seen, especially for someone so high up at a company and so ingrained into Halo as a brand. Like that was your career for 17 years, was doing Halo, and you're leaving in this, big, somewhat angry statement. So like, what the hell happened? Related to Halo, we do have actual news that's coming in, I think, like 2 weeks, where we are approaching like the 25th anniversary of Halo, and there is a Halo World Championship event. I think that's what's happening. But it is on October 24th, where it's at least strongly hinted that 343 will finally talk about the next Halo game, which is, 4 years after Halo Infinite as of right now. It was supposed to be a launch game with Series X and got delayed a year, right? That's what happened. So that seems like it could be a reveal of the next Halo game, because like Lord knows it's at least time to start talking about a new Halo game, even if it's a couple more years away. What happens from here is unclear. There was stuff going on that happened with Infinite where they were going to do more story content, and that was cut. So it's like this should be the game, or whenever, that we do more Master Chief stuff, because Infinite very much seemed like it was the beginning of something new, and then it just didn't happen. It also seemed like it skipped a bunch of important chapters, a lot of Cortana stuff. I don't really have much faith in Halo anymore as a brand. I did not like the Infinite campaign really whatsoever. The open world thing was fine. Storyline was ass. Multiplayer started off really bad. I know it got really good, pretty good over time, but it's crazy that like all of Xbox like future, plans, blah, 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 like just never include Halo. So maybe we're finally getting something there. We'll see. I will end with the Destiny stuff. I made a video this week about the launch of the Exotic Quest Heliostat, which is easily bottom 3 exotic quests they've done. It's just very short. It is mechanically uninteresting. The boss is recycled from Curse of Osiris, of all places, with the same mechanics pretty much. And it is just taking stuff from Spire the Watcher. I think it even had the music from Spire the Watcher. Just a very weird mission that ends very abruptly, and it shows that Bungie is scaling back in kind of every way. Expansions, seasonal content, which isn't really seasonal content anymore, and even an exotic mission. Not a great indicator. But also this week they talked about what they're changing with power for Renegades, in that they are not kicking down everyone to 200 power like they said, which would erase all progress. Simultaneously, they are not raising the power cap, which would have been the same thing, essentially, so that wasn't exactly a surprise. This is good news because, no one wants to have a grind that's all what we did again, but just, even longer. No one really wants to do that again. And it does, it says that whatever you grind right now, you will just keep that as you head into Renegades. But none of this makes sense with the portal system and the way the game is designed now. Like, you're not supposed to just have, 6 months of a power grind and then essentially nothing. And then you're just running the portal, not really for power gains that matter, but just tier 4 and tier 5 loot, which you should start getting instantly when Renegades drops. And clearly this was not how the system was supposed to work in the first place. But they clearly can see that everyone hates the power grind, and by proxy, a lot of people hate the portal. So they are trying to do whatever they can to kind of walk that back, but nothing that significant can change by Renegades. Like, the portal is still going to be there. The portal is still going to be the main point of content for the following 6 months of the game. And Lord knows we can't expect anything too interesting with the mid-season update based on Ash and Iron. So it's going to be a weird time period where the power climb is faster than it used to be. I mean, I know a lot of people quit months ago, which can't blame me for that, but they have already done a lot of buffs to how fast you can gain power. But once you're done doing that or get into a range that you want, I'm not quite sure what else there is to do except grind specific tier 4 and 5s and whatever the new loot pool is, which is going to be 70-80% of the same portal activities we have now, probably. And then I don't know if Renegades is going to function like Edge of Fate, where it's just sort of self-contained thing. Like, there's not Edge of Fate stuff in the portal per se, so many Renegades will be sectioned off like that too. It's none of this really works together, and the more changes they make, the more their idea for the old system kind of falls apart. But they don't really have anything to replace it. We'll see what happens in year 2. I have to imagine they're going to be making more substantive changes in year 2, but we just don't know yet. So anyway, that's the news I thought was interesting for the week, and we'll see how Battlefield 6 does. And I'm going to go play more Ghost of Yotei. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.